Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our first speaker series for this semester for the CohenTalks, for the Cohen Business Professionalism Speaker Series. And today we have a very special guest. We have one of our alumni, and she was actually SGA president and has various other titles, but I'm going to turn the floor over to Jenn Owen, and he's going to welcome you and talk a little bit about the speaker series, and welcome Jenn as well. Jenn Owen.
Thank you, Glenn. Well, first of all, we are delighted to launch or sort of relaunch the Cohen Speaker Series for this academic year. It's a different format, but I know that we have a great set of speakers lined up, and the goals are the same, which is to equip our students to be successful in their careers and in the world of business. A couple of years back, Brad D. Smith, an alumnus of Marshall University, came forward and made a transformative gift of $25 million to the Lewis College of Business and to Marshall University to have a whole new focus in terms of entrepreneurial thinking, experiential learning, and a new building that you can see behind Glenn Metcalf right now in his background. We are in the process of getting that building done. But what is really important for us here is this focus on experiential learning. We are very interested in making sure that our classes and our students are connected with the world of business in every step of the way. We are doing a lot of things in this regard, but foremost, I want to thank Ron and Sandy Cohen for making their gift to make this speaker series possible. Ron Cohen, again, an alum of Marshall, extremely successful in Texas, has been thinking of this idea for a long time. And then 3 years or so back, he came forward with this idea, and we put this series together, which has been immensely successful. I would say over the past 2 years, we have had about 25 speakers from business speak to our students through this series. And it has not only helped our students to hear from the best in business and some of our best alumni, but also to really plan their career on these lines, prepare their own vita, prepare their own resume. They do a business professionalism workshop, and eventually our students get a certificate on business professionalism through this speaker series. So because this is a series that ends up in some outcome, which I think is very valuable for our students, we have been able to make networks and connections for our students for jobs and internships through this series. And I'm just delighted that we have such a wonderful start to this series this academic year with Jenn Owen. I know she's one of our brightest and most successful alums, and she brings a wealth of experience and expertise to the table that we are all looking forward to hearing from. So with that, I'll welcome Jenn, and I'll hand this back to Glenn if you want to say anything more. I think you would formally introduce Jenn. Go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Jenn Owen. Jenn Owen, thank you so much. It's my pleasure to introduce Jenn. Jenn Owen is a banking executive and community advocate in Johnson City, Tennessee. And she combines her passion for education, commitment to teamwork, and leadership. And so she's been the vice president of BB&T, now Truist. I always have to remember that. And has 15 years of experience in commercial finance and major gift philanthropy. She's a former SGA president, student body president, and a graduate of Marshall University, where she served on the alumni board for more than 12 years and was named Distinguished Young Alumni of the Year in 2019. And that's actually where I met Jenn and got to speak to her in person. She has held several executive banking roles and served as the Director of Development at Rutgers University in New Jersey. Her passions include education, leadership, development, and female empowerment. Jenn is a strong champion of community involvement and is an agent for positive change. She's a member of 100 plus Tri-Cities women who care and chaired the most recent campaign for United Way of East Tennessee Highlands. She also served in multiple leadership capacities with the Ronald McDonald House, the Alzheimer's Association, the American Heart Association, the YWCA, and the PTA. Jenn has been recognized for her accomplishment and service for the 40 under 40 list in the Business Journal of Tri-Cities, Tennessee / Virginia. And as a power woman, I think it's in VIP Scene magazine. She lives in Johnson City, Tennessee with her husband and her 2 young children, a 5-year-old boy and a 2-year-old girl. Well, welcome, Jenn. We're so glad to have you today and learn more about you and also about your experience and learn more about branding. So take the floor, Jenn.
Well, thank you so much, Glenn, for the welcome, and thank you to Dean Avi for having me here today. It is wonderful to be, quote unquote, back on campus, at least virtually, and I am really excited to speak with all of you about my personal experience, not only at Marshall, but since graduation, which surprisingly happened 15 years ago for me. I am going to talk a little bit about the power of your personal brand, but I'm also going to start with my story. I know that you had mentioned I currently serve as the Senior Vice President at BB&T Now Truist and the commercial side of the house, and we'll talk more about how a West Virginia native that got a marketing degree from the Lewis College of Business ended up in a finance career. So let's jump right in, and I do welcome questions throughout the presentation. I think that Glenn is going to save those to share with us at the end, but please feel free to chat your questions in as we go. As I mentioned, I am from West Virginia. Fairmont, West Virginia is where I call home. For those that are not familiar, it is in the northern part of the state, dangerously close to the blue and gold that we see from our other university within West Virginia. After graduating high school, I started attending Marshall in 2002 and graduated in 2005 after receiving enough scholarship assistance to pay for 3 years of college, which means that I loaded up with 21 or 24-hour credits each semester to graduate early so that I did not have to take out student loan debt. I really didn't know what I wanted to do for a living when I started college. I had been through the career track programs that were offered in high school. I had been very actively involved in our community and in student government, but I just never had an immediate passion for something that was a defined career path. I knew lots of things I didn't want to be. I didn't want to be a doctor. I didn't want to be a lawyer. I didn't have a passion to go into education or to follow in my family's footsteps as a teacher. But my mom gave me some great advice when I was a high school senior that I think has really been the foundational belief that has led my career path. And she encouraged me when attending Marshall to think long and hard about being a marketing major. Her statement to me at the time is one that I still repeat today, which is no matter what career path you go into, you will always have to market. The number one thing you have to market is yourself. And while that sounds simplistic in nature and was probably something that caused me to roll my eyes as an 18-year-old student, I will say that it's very true. And to this day, I am very grateful for the marketing degree that I earned at the Lewis College of Business. Upon graduation, in 2005, I had big dreams of being Helen Hunt from the movie What Women Want. I thought I would be a high-powered marketing executive on the 30-plus floor of some major city skyscraper building where I would be working on marketing campaigns for a large firm. However, the reality is that wasn't the career path or opportunity that I found immediately after graduation. And it was very important to me that I find a career path that would allow me to start working before I considered any type of graduate degree. At that time, I had a great opportunity with BB&T, that is their management development program. It was essentially an extension of my college degree focused on commercial lending that took place at Wake Forest University's campus at the BB&T University. After being accepted into this rigorous program, I essentially attended college in a suit for the next 8 months to go through a rigorous banking program that prepared me for a career in finance. At the time, it did not necessarily appeal to me as something that would be a fit for my personality because I thought of banking as somewhat a boring career path. I only envisioned people sitting behind desks crunching numbers. But quickly I learned that that was not necessarily the case and began my career. One of the perks of the management program at BB&T at the time is that they would allow candidates to be placed throughout the footprint of the bank, either requesting your top few choices or awaiting to see where placement was needed. And the year that I graduated, they had an opening for a credit analyst in Charleston, West Virginia. Well, needless to say, I was eager to raise my hand and volunteer, but I did not face much competition. And so I was quickly placed in Charleston and started my career downtown. I spent the next few years in Charleston, West Virginia as an analyst, and then in Huntington, West Virginia, working right over on First Street, getting involved with the Marshall community again, and starting as a business banker, managing a portfolio where we helped clients essentially with any type of business banking need they had. We call ourselves the quarterbacks as the relationship manager that help bring in expertise from different partners throughout the bank. At that time, I met my then boyfriend, now husband, who was a Marshall graduate student that was working in a career in athletics at Virginia Tech University. Just a few months into my time in Huntington, my boyfriend, now husband, and I met, and about a year and a half later, I had an opportunity to grow within BB&T and relocate to Roanoke, Virginia, just outside of Blacksburg, where my then boyfriend, now husband, was located. We got married right in downtown Huntington at First United Methodist Church, had our reception in the Don Morris room, and if I'm being honest, we had our night before after rehearsal dinner party at the Union, because that was where my husband and I had met originally. After finishing at Virginia Tech, my husband was placed with Rutgers University, and we relocated to New Jersey to live out a really unique section of our lives in the northern part of the United States. I did not at that time have a chance to go work for another bank because BB&T had invested extensively in this management training program, and I had a pretty significant repayment penalty if I chose to go work for another bank before fulfilling my 5-year contract. So I decided to switch career paths, yet again in the back of my mind hearing that if I could market myself, I could do just about anything. And so instead of managing a portfolio of business clients that typically needed depository or lending services from me as a banker, I became a major gift development officer for Rutgers University Foundation, where I quickly found myself in the New Jersey, Greater Manhattan area, actively competing for generous philanthropic gifts on behalf of Rutgers School of Communication and Information. It was a wild ride and a really fun experience to live in the city, but I will say after just shy of 5 years in the North, we decided to come back to what our Southern roots felt to be and relocated to Johnson City, Tennessee. I returned to the banking world, although I enjoyed development, and have been back at BB&T now working in commercial lending as well. So that's a little bit about my background. And I want to talk to you today about that personal branding piece of marketing, because that's something that has always stood with me. It's something that I think people underestimate, and it's an opportunity that you can impact change in your life today by focusing on your personal brand. We all know the definition of personal brand is a conscious and intentional effort to create and influence public perception. And I personally believe that those are driven by 3 areas of your life: your experiences, your affiliations, and your content. And so I want to talk briefly about how those 3 areas have impacted my personal brand and how I have learned to use my marketing degree even in a quote unquote boring banking career. Experiences. Glenn mentioned that during my time on campus, though it was a brief 3 years, I served as SGA student body president. It was one of the coolest experiences of my life, and I loved my time serving our campus, serving our students, working alongside our faculty, and I had a very close relationship with our then university president, Dr. Dan Angel. One of the coolest things that happened during my tenure as student body president from 2004 to 2005 is that the campus signed a contract with McGee to produce the movie We Are Marshall. It was an exciting time, but it was also a sentimental time as we thought back to the events that took place in 1970. So when I think about experiences in my life, there's a few monumental ones that took place. I mentioned the fact that my husband and I met at the Union, which is shown in the photograph below, where our friends threw our night before wedding gathering in celebration of our marriage. You'll see a picture of my husband and I in the upper corner, where we attended Marshall University, myself as undergrad and he as a graduate student, and we credit our time there as how we connected. You'll see the picture from the movie premiere. While I was no longer student body president, I did have the incredible privilege and honor as a credit analyst in Charleston, West Virginia, to purchase a ticket and attend the movie premiere in person, where I spared you the selfies, but I did get a chance to take them with Matthew Fox, Matthew McConaughey, and some of the other stars of the movie. It was by far the first and only time that I have felt like a Hollywood celebrity walking down the streets of Huntington and attending that premiere that took place in our city and community. Then I talked about our time in New York. You'll see the skyline photo below and a picture of my husband and I on the exchange floor at the New York Stock Exchange. We had some really cool experiences thanks to the time in the city, but as you can tell, I don't sound right to fit into that environment sometimes, and so I did enjoy our brief stint, but I'm grateful that we have moved south. In the last couple years, we've added to our family with those cute little kids in their Halloween costumes that you'll see from both our first family of 4 photo all the way up till last year at Halloween. That's my son Anderson, who's 5, and my daughter Adeline, who's 2, who have played an integral part in our experiences in becoming parents. Finally, you'll see at the bottom a picture of the battle at Bristol. My husband works at Bristol Motor Speedway here in East Tennessee, and it has greatly influenced our lives being involved in not only the NASCAR industry, but in hosting the world's largest college football game here in our back door, which as a ticket guy's wife, I'm pretty proud of what he and his team accomplished, filling that venue with so many individuals. And then finally, the picture of my girlfriends and I in the middle is from our 100 Plus Women Who Care initiative, which is a group that is a giving circle where members in our community have pledged their personal dollars to combine together and make great impact of $10,000 a quarter to different nonprofit organizations. These experiences have really helped shape my personal brand, because something that's important to me is making connections. As Dr. Dean Avi stated earlier, he wanted our students at Marshall to be able to connect and to make connections prior to graduation, because it's such an integral part of your career path. I found that anytime you interview for an opportunity, they're going to ask you to share your personal experiences. And oftentimes, before you have true work experience, those can be hard to find. And so I found that pulling from your personal experiences on campus, making contacts throughout the university and throughout the community are easy ways for you to have relatable experiences that you can share and connect in an interview setting. I think back to the faculty members that impacted my time on campus, specifically folks like Dr. Mader or Dr. Alexander, and some of the members of our faculty, or excuse me, our administration, such as Dean Hensley. And those individuals were really powerful in helping me craft personal experiences on campus that then translated into just realistic opportunities in the career world that I could pull on until I had work experience. The next piece of personal brand to me is your affiliations. They've always said, or whoever they is, the quote goes, that you are the folks that you spend the most time with. You become those who you surround yourself with. And I think that's very true as well with where you choose to affiliate your time. These are some logos of organizations that I've chosen to affiliate with, not only from a personal standpoint, such as my career at Truist, BB&T now Truist, or at Muncie, which is our Methodist church that we are members of, but it's also nonprofits throughout our community that have been important to me. Universities such as Marshall, or my husband's also a graduate of Wingate University, have been important to us. And then, of course, opportunities for us to give back throughout the community. Your affiliations help shape your personal brand because it's very important for folks to understand where your authenticity comes from. Who are you at the core of your being? And if that person that you're wishing to present your best face for within the world is interested in philanthropy and giving back and helping the community for a greater need, then it's important that you find a way to serve in that focus and in that capacity so that you can share your affiliations with others. Finally, it's all about content in today's world. And as we look at 2020 and all that has taken place in the last 6 months, content has become more and more important. If you had asked me if I would be coming to you today from my home office, dressed only from the waist up on the appropriate business attire, and praying that my 2-year-old and 5-year-old don't run through that bedroom door during nap time for this presentation, I would think that we were all a little off. Because chances are I would be at the office, I would be out meeting with clients, I would be presenting on behalf of the bank, and there's no way I would be sitting at home for all of this time. We went remote in early April and are slated to be so until early February. And that has made it incredibly difficult to not only brand myself personally, but to also continue to network and to provide meaningful content to our community and to those that we affiliate with during this time. So of course, we've all leaned on digital opportunities such as this Zoom session that we're hosting today. I wish that I was with you on campus and hope in the future I can be. But in the meantime, we have to think long and hard about the digital presence that we have. In fact, I would argue that digital presence has not only grown to be one of the most important aspects of your overall brand, but it's the easiest to do wrong. And I say that with love, but it is the easiest one to do wrong. Pretty much everyone probably has some form of one of the icons that you see on the screen, or chances are you have all of them. You may even have ones that I, as a 15-year graduate now, middle of my life individual, may not even know about. But when it comes to these icons, it's really important that you think about each message that you share as your personal branding content. I put a lot of thought into how I brand myself on social media. And that doesn't mean that I am hiding the truth of myself or my individual tastes or preferences. I just think of them through the filter of whether or not it is a meaningful impact to our society. So for example, when we're interviewing candidates or when we're looking for hires throughout the community, it's very easy to pull up their Facebook. I think we all know by now that Facebook is something that's checked regularly. But I've also found that LinkedIn, while being the most polished form of your resume, is just one end of the spectrum that we look at when we're hiring candidates. For me personally, I've really enjoyed looking on Venmo. Venmo, of course, is the payment app similar to PayPal, but is become trendy to use icons, to use images, photos, emojis to communicate what you're paying for. It's also public. And so it's very easy for us to search individual candidates' names or to search people that we're affiliating with on Venmo and see what their payment patterns look like. Now, that's something that you can also choose to make private, which is how I choose to operate on that platform. But just know that that's one format that you could use that could tarnish personal branding, but could also benefit you if you know how to use it properly. Snapchat and TikTok are lots of fun. I definitely enjoy scrolling through them or looking at different images, but very, again, quick to filter the content that you put out there for the world. Instagram is my personal favorite. I've chosen to keep Instagram as a private platform. That's one where I tend to share pictures of our children, pictures of adventures that we're on as a family, and I limit that to a very tight audience of under 100 people. Facebook, on the other hand, I like to use as my interactive LinkedIn profile. I've chosen to use Facebook to market and showcase different agencies, nonprofits, and businesses, small businesses throughout our community. And I try to use that platform primarily for positive shares about things taking place in our community that are for the greater good. I do choose to keep my political affiliations, my desire to search for new recipes, for the most part, pictures of my children and their day-to-day lives off of that platform. But I sprinkle it in on occasion because it is important to be authentic to what's happening in your life. But again, to remember that ultimately the content you put out there will impact your personal brand. And if you are strategic and think about the process that you want to use to develop content, it can be a really powerful tool in driving your personal branding and differentiating you amongst the crowd. So finally, I wanted to share this image that came from my career coach. I recently hired a career coach earlier this year to help me focus on just how to advance even further towards my ultimate goals within my career path. And I think that it's important to note that you can always be striving to learn more, to gain more, to build stronger connections, and that having a coach help you along the way is just a great way to have outside perspective shed light on perception as reality. What you are viewed and how you are viewed with your potential is a great thing to come from a career coach. So she took the time to work with me on collecting survey feedback from individuals that I know personally, professionally, or work with on a day-to-day basis. They completed the questions on the survey and shared their thoughts. And then my career coach took that information with her team and put it together to form this image of words that were used to describe me. Not all of them are great. Some of them are, and some of them are areas for opportunity and growth. But again, your personal brand is all about how you provide and present yourself to the world around you. And so this is just another great tool to think about what you're putting out into the world. I also want to make one more additional comment about connections and the power of connections. You know, relationship building has been a term that I personally feel has been overused for the last 15, 20 years that I've been in the college/work environment. To me, building a relationship is something that takes a long time, a lot of effort, and it has to be mutually interesting to both parties. While relationships are important and they absolutely do transition between the personal and professional world, I think building meaningful connections is more important. And here's why. To me, connections are something that has a mutually beneficial content between them. I build connections where I can help introduce people to the right experts that they're looking for, where I can help add value in some way, shape, or form without expecting a long-term commitment from the relationship, but to use it more as a connection that is beneficial for a period of time. I think that it's very easy in today's world for us to believe that we have relationships with an extensive network of folks, primarily through the social media networking and content that we just talked about. In reality, I like to think of that as an opportunity for connection building, because relationships are something that should be a little more sacred, should be a little smaller circle, in my opinion, so that you do not invest in a long-term commitment with multiple people in the community, which could really cloud your ability to build connections as time changes. So that's the majority of the content that I wanted to provide to you today. I'd really love to answer any questions that you have, not only about me, but just about campus in general, or things that have been on your mind. And so thank you, Glenn, for the opportunity to share, and I'm happy to hear what everyone has to say.
Well, Jen, thank you so much. Thank you for your presentation. It was very informative, and I think it's something that our students and I needed to hear as well, as far as branding, you know, and the importance of social media, you know, and how we, especially at this time in our country where the election is going to happen on November 3rd, people love to put opinions on social media, and so trying to harness that, you know, and change our focus on how we portray ourselves. I do have a couple questions. I got a couple questions by email, actually. One question was, if I want an internship at Truist, how do I apply? Where do I go?
Great. Well, we do offer internships throughout our entire footprint. I would love to connect you in any way, shape, or form that I can. If you would like to email me via the link that you see, the email address that you see on the screen. Our internship program will probably look a little different this year. I'll be honest, I've not been involved in our COVID-19 policies around how we will be engaging interns, but I do know that we're welcoming our next class of leadership development program, what I had previously referenced as management development program at Truist. And so I would be happy to try to connect you with internship opportunities throughout our footprint. The biggest thing I will say is when you're looking to intern during college, of course, you'll need to keep it local, but when you're looking for experience outside of graduation, it truly helps to be flexible to relocate. And I referenced moving all over for career opportunities, being in 5 states and 13 addresses in 10 years post-graduation. So just know that it does help to be flexible. And so to think long-term about where you would be willing to go for internship opportunities. But feel free to email me.
Great advice. And then also I would say, you know, start early. You know, don't wait until April, you know, to start searching for an internship. You really need to start November, December, January to start looking for those internships instead of waiting so long to apply for them. And then our other question that we had, what is the best career advice that you've ever received?
The best career advice I had ever received is one that I continue to repeat because I think it has a lot of merit. Do not wait until you meet 100% of the qualifications on the application on the posting to apply for a job. If you meet 60 to 70% of the expectations of the job posting, go ahead and apply. There's something to be said for being willing and able to take on more responsibility and more risk. If we waited until we were 100% ready for each position that we took on, chances are you're taking a position that is not the right next step in your career. It's something that you could have already done by now. So strive a little harder, reach a little higher when it comes for applying for things, and be realistic that no candidate is perfect or can meet every item. When you're writing a job description, it's almost like writing a wish list for a spouse. You're never going to find somebody that meets every one of those qualifications, but chances are you'll find somebody that comes close, and that might be the person that you end up committing to. So it could be a job or career fit if you just give it a chance. Interview often and interview just to keep your skills fresh. It'll never hurt you to make another connection.
Great. Speaking of interviews, our next question is, what interview advice would you give to students getting ready to start interviews within the next few months?
Really think long and hard about how you're going to present yourself in the interview. It's important that if you have the opportunity to interview in person, that you go dressed for the position that you're interviewing for or a position above it. It's important that you invest in a suit if it's in the business world, or invest in the right apparel so that you can make that first impression memorable and show that you're taking the opportunity seriously. I also think that one of the things I touched on the presentation about experiences is something that is worth thinking about before the interview. Think about how your personal experiences in college or in childhood or in life in general are translatable to the career that you're applying for. I think it's important to go into the interview knowing that they're going to ask you questions that require you to draw on your personal experiences. So go ahead and be proactive in thinking about what some of those experiences are and how you can translate them in the interview to show that you have basic skills that meet the expectations of the job.
We have a question from our dean, okay? In the post-pandemic world, how do our students prepare for the new future of work?
Great question, Dean. I think that now more than ever, it's important that our students are proactive in their communication skills. Every day we receive applications or inquiries from individuals that have not taken the time to properly write a resume, to properly communicate over email, and don't have the follow through that is necessary to make yourself stand out. In today's world, that means being creative. I have to admit, I have not yet done it myself, but I've heard more and more of my friends making video resumes, which is an opportunity for you to showcase your skills in 2020 in a post-pandemic world that allows you to be visible to the hiring committee. I also think that it's important, if you have the opportunity to Zoom or to do a face-to-face virtual interview, that you turn your camera on, that you make sure the background is appropriate, that you're dressed just as you would if you were in a face-to-face environment. Because I think that a lot of what you will see in the post-pandemic professional environment or corporate environment is going to be those that can hustle the hardest to the limited opportunities that will be available. We're all dealing with the impact that COVID-19 has had on the bottom line, which means that we may or may not be recruiting as heavily as we have in the past. And so when spots are limited and when it's a more competitive market, you want to stand out as a candidate, you want to put your best foot forward, and you also want to be flexible and thinking outside of the box, just like this marketing major did who became a banker, that your career path could be very translatable to lots of different opportunities. So grab a professor, grab the dean who knows more about the different industries than you might as a student, and really let them help you think outside the box for career opportunities.
Very good. We had a follow-up question. Could you offer any more advice for students regarding virtual interviews, preparing for that?
Sure. So I think it's always important, if you're going to do a virtual interview, that you test your virtual software at the beginning. I'm set up here at home in my home office, and what you can't see is a lot of the things that I'll tell you that's going on behind the scenes. So the first thing that we did when we prepared for this interview is I had Glenn dial in with me, which again may not be possible in an interview setting, but you could have a friend Zoom you on their phone from across the room, FaceTime them from across the room. And we did things like check lighting. I've got a blind right here and windows behind me that overlook our backyard. And so we tested the blinds to decide where we needed them to be for proper lighting. I made sure that I didn't have confidential bank information on the screen behind me. And when I tap my mouse by mistake, or when I'm chatting and I get distracted, I wanted to make sure that it popped up with our branding, which was an appropriate way to show that you might want to have something in the background like the Marshall logo or something that shows that you're interested. I also think it's important that you be dressed appropriately. I have on gym shorts right now, and I was going to jokingly show you that, but I'm going to keep it professional. I still put on my suit jacket for you. I still put on my Marshall green, made sure that I felt like I was presenting myself appropriately, even though it's going to stay just right here on a Zoom interview. So I do think you can do a lot of things to stand out. It may seem like common sense, and I used to think that it wasn't advice worth repeating because everyone should know that. But in reality, the more we interview and the more I interact with folks, it is not the norm to know how to present yourself on camera. And so think long and hard about how you want to present yourself in the interview setting. Practice beforehand. Be competent in how your resume experiences are translatable to the job. And I really hope and think that you will do much better than most. And don't give up. And interviews are often a trial and error. You're interviewing the company as much as they're interviewing you. You want to make sure the culture is a fit for you. You want to make sure the environment is a fit. You want to make sure that you're not applying for a paycheck, but you're applying for an opportunity where you can learn and grow and advance in that career field, whether you choose to continue or to use that for a season of life to move into something else. So interview them as much as they're interviewing you. Make sure you have questions ready.
Okay, I have a question as well. You've been working from home, and it was a challenge for me as well. And many of our students may work from home initially when they get that internship or they even get a full-time job. So what have been some challenges for you? And then how have you overcome those? And what are some strategies that you would recommend?
Great question, because this has been a big adjustment for those of us. I used to joke that my Toyota Highlander was my office because I spent so much time in the car visiting clients, visiting prospective clients, and networking with centers of influence in our community. And so being homebound is a huge adjustment to my mindset, to the way that I conduct business. Now, I will say for me personally, it's been helpful to maintain a schedule that is realistic post-pandemic. That doesn't mean that I have the same schedule I did. In fact, it's very different than the schedule I had when I went into the office. So the way that I make sure that I'm structuring my day properly and that I'm guarding that time realistically is I use my calendar perfectly when it comes to my time. If I have a time slot committed to a meeting, or if I have a time slot where I need to commit to my family, it is on my calendar and I commit to it and I stay within that time window. When I'm invited to meetings that are scheduled on my calendar for a period of time and those look like they're going to go lengthy, I'm very quick to excuse myself and to say I only had this slotted amount of time on my calendar. I'm unable to continue now, but I'd love to schedule a follow-up with you to continue the conversation. So guarding your calendar, guarding your time, being transparent about what you need to use that time for. I don't need to put on my calendar that I had to leave yesterday afternoon to take my kids to get their flu shots, but I did block off that time that I would be out of the office and unavailable. And let's be honest, in 2020, with everything that we've experienced in the world, a lot of my time has been spent learning how to be a working mom whose kids are also in the home. And so between doing remote kindergarten for my 5-year-old to keeping my 2-year-old safe and entertained, I had to adjust my work schedule so that I could work early mornings before they woke up. I get a lot of things done during their nap time, and it's not uncommon for me to get back on the computer, especially when we were dealing with the CARES Act PPP loans that our bank spent time processing earlier this year. We worked a lot of late nights. In fact, most days my shift would start at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. and go until 3 or 4 in the morning, which was a little bit crazy, but we had to find a window that worked for us. And I would have rather been awake during the day serving my mom duties, and my banking duties get pushed to the evenings at that time. So to answer your question in a very lengthy way, I think post-pandemic, some of the challenges I have faced is being efficient with my time, blocking my time appropriately and sticking to that. creating a schedule that provides a little bit of grace for the situation that we're in, but also holds me accountable to my day. And then lastly, I know this sounds silly, and I definitely did not do it consistently, but on the days when I took the effort to get up early, to exercise, to put on some makeup or put my hair in one of my better ponytails, I did feel better throughout the day. And so just because we're home doesn't mean that you have to fully embrace the whole the shtick that you see a lot on social media right now, which is the idea of, sweatpants and no makeup and sleeping in and all those things. Those are great. And I'm one of the first ones to love to do that. But I also find that I'm more productive, I'm more focused, and I ultimately feel better about my day if I can get up, get a run in, have a good breakfast, and kind of get started. So it's the same principles they taught us as a kid. It's just hard being the adult in the house that has to tell it to myself.
We have a follow-up question to that question. Someone wanted to know, one of our participants wanted to know, since most of us, most people are working remotely, do you think there'll be challenges going back into the office? And what's the best way to adjust when you get back into your office?
I absolutely think there will be challenges in going back to the office. The impact that this has had on our social cues, on our comfort level, and being around people is going to be probably a little comical at times as we adjust. I'll be the first one to admit when I'm sitting on a lengthy conference call presentation that it's very easy to go off camera and run to the restroom or run to get a snack and come back and nobody really knows the difference. I'll be interested to see how the first time I'm sitting in a meeting that I just hop up and walk out of the room without remembering that I can't do that anymore will impact our environment. So I think that when we're transitioning back into the office, there's a few things that we could probably do to prepare for that. One thing that I've been doing during pandemic that has been helpful to me is I try to go out on my lunch break for a change of scenery. I often eat in the backyard. I'll eat in my car. I'll pack a lunch and go for a drive. I just like the change of scenery that is afforded by having a little break up in the routine. And so when you're going back to the office, I think it's equally important to realize that jumping back in both feet at the same time is going to be an adjustment. So carve out, if you can, if you have the flexibility, carve out some time to take that lunch break or to get up and to go for a walk around the building and to just kind of refocus because it will be a large adjustment. I also think that we'll be excited to interact with people again, face to face, and things that we really took for granted pre-COVID. But that doesn't mean that we want to spend all of our time in each other's offices talking about, the football game that happened over the weekend, the water cooler chat. I don't think we want to overindulge in that when we go back because it will be very easy to do so. Of course, there's an adjustment period for the first couple weeks where you're excited to see everybody. You want to catch up on life over the last 6 months, but try very hard to be cognizant of how much time you are spending doing that after the adjustment period, because I think it will be easy for us to fall into a work environment where we're so excited to see each other, we forget that we also have to start working. Just like when I first came home, it was really hard for me not to go fold laundry and do the dishes and all the things I want to do while I'm on work time. It was hard to kind of draw that boundary. And so I think that we have to be conscious of those boundaries going back to work. And then most importantly, try on your dress clothes with plenty of time beforehand so that if you need to go shopping, it is okay. I assure you, I personally have always felt better and looked better in a suit that fit than trying to convince myself that that suit will fit soon. So it's okay if quarantine was not kind to the wardrobe. Let's just all consider that an opportunity to refresh our looks and to go back into the office feeling good about what we're wearing and being comfortable, because it will be a transition to go from yoga pants back into suits.
Very good. Since it's a hard time to get a job right now, we have a participant that's really struggling. I'm thinking about keeping my current job, even though it's not in my field of interest, for at least another year or so after graduation. Any advice on this?
That is such a tough spot to be in, and I feel for you because I've been through that. There was a period of time where I felt that I needed to stay in the job that I was in because it wasn't a great market in 2008. 2008 to 2012 was a period that I was in a career in New Jersey when we talked about development that maybe wasn't fulfilling me in all the ways that other career paths had. One thing that I learned that we sometimes have to do the things that we do in order to maintain basic needs. So we obviously need a paycheck, we need to pay rent, we want to eat, we want to keep the lights on. And so if that means staying in the current career, because you should never leave a job without another one lined up. That's major advice to repeat. Don't ever leave a job without another one lined up willingly. Then I encourage you to think about ways that you can grow your personal brand outside of the career that you're currently in. Do the job that needs to be done to be a good employee and to stay committed, but find ways to grow yourself outside of the company. For example, when I was in the development role and it wasn't necessarily the greatest all-around fit, I found that as a great opportunity to start getting involved in nonprofit work. I loved leading, I loved serving other organizations, and I loved finding ways to give back to our community. So I started as a former banker, signing up to be on the finance committee and the treasurer for different organizations. That allowed me to kind of flex those creativity muscles in the financial space and to stay engaged with things that fueled my passion that weren't in my career path. It also helped me network and to make connections that ultimately may get your foot in the door sooner than a traditional posting on Indeed or finding a job listing out there. If you have a connection, 9 times out of 10, that will help you get an interview. And at the end of the day, the goal is always to get the interview. It's up to you to win the job at that point. So if you can get connections through outside opportunities or affiliations during this time, there's nothing wrong with being in a season of your career that's a little bit slower than others. It affords you the opportunity to focus on your personal passions, your personal brand, and finding ways to do things that excite you. I mentioned earlier that being a banker wasn't something I thought about from a marketing standpoint. And because I love marketing so much and I don't necessarily get to use that as much during the workday, I love to be involved with organizations and market them on Facebook. So I'm the ultimate sign me up to be your social media guru when I volunteer for committees, because it lets me use that creative side that I don't always get to do at the bank. I get creative with structures for loans, but other than that, I don't get to be as creative as I might want to.
What are some tips, and you covered this a little bit earlier in your presentation, what are some tips to help you get noticed when you are a new hire in the virtual working world?
Say that for me again. I'm sorry, you cut out.
What are some tips to help get noticed when you are a new hire, so you've recently been hired in the virtual working world?
Great question. I think when you're a new hire or new to a team and you don't get to interact with that team on a face-to-face basis, that you have to work even harder to build a relationship with them, to build a connection. So as a new hire, if you aren't assigned one already, go looking for a mentor within the company. Ask your manager for assistance in creating a mentorship opportunity for you. You want to start building connections with people throughout the company that can help you long-term have individuals that you work well with when you return to face-to-face environments. It's very easy to isolate and to kind of hole up and focus solely on yourself when you're in a remote working environment. I find myself, even as an extreme extrovert, as a type A personality that was always called Monica Geller from Friends. That was what my friends would jokingly call me. Jokingly, but they were right. I found it, even for me, it's really easy to go a whole day and not talk to somebody face-to-face, of course, but even by phone. So pick up the phone, call your colleagues, even for things that could be addressed over an email, for a quick conversation every now and then. Find ways, if your company has opportunities for chat. We have a chat system through Microsoft Office that we use for inter-office conversations. Remember that those are 100% printable and something that you should always be very cautious about what you discuss. But it's a great way to reach out to employees and coworkers and get to know folks in a somewhat personal way when you can't just walk down the hall and ask them a question. So that would be my advice, is to try to be the one to reach out and to push yourself out of the comfort zone to meet people, because it's much harder to do when you're remote.
Well, thank you. So we have a question from Melissa. She asks, how do you deal with technology difficulties that accompany this pandemic in the workplace?
You're speaking my language, Alyssa, because sometimes I wonder about that millennial label that I get based on my birthday, because technology is not necessarily my strong suit. I've seen technology blunders in about every facet of my career way before this pandemic, and it's just been heightened since the pandemic. One thing, if you are the one who is experiencing the technical difficulties and the meeting is centered around you, the interview is centered around you, the conversation is focused on you, then it's really important that you maintain a positive attitude and conduct yourself with some grace, because it's hard to know when they can actually see and hear you. Funnily enough, I had a conference call earlier today that was a presentation format, and I felt awful for our host, but he was unable to get his screen to work. He didn't think his audio was working, and so he shared some choice words that I've definitely said out loud but wouldn't want to say to a group of employees, and we all heard it, and we all had to deal with the embarrassment for him and not knowing that he was still on camera. And so I encourage you in the technology space to understand that those things happen, to try your hardest to practice and to put things in place beforehand. But even then, you're going to have connection issues. You're going to have problems with your phone. Just don't let it be something that is something you can manage. Don't let it be a mistake that you've made because you didn't charge your phone beforehand. You didn't have your laptop plugged in. Even though I had 100% battery, we are plugged into this MacBook right now because I did not want to take the chances that my laptop went down during the presentation. So make sure that it's the things that are controllable, that you are 100% focused and honed in on, and just know that the uncontrollable are going to cause aches and pains, but try to have a positive attitude about it. Try to just let it roll off your shoulder and move on. And if someone is not understanding of it, that's unfortunate, because I have found that the majority of people are experiencing technical difficulties, and we all just have to have a little more patience than we're used to.
Thank you so much, Jenn. We have, I think, a very special guest today, or participant. You mentioned her earlier in your talk. Dr. Elizabeth Alexander is with us, and so I wanted to let you know that she's probably watching you. She couldn't get on it initially. I think there was a bad link, but I think she finally got on here. But I'm glad that she's able to see you.
Thank you.
And see some of your presentation. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Dr. Alexander. You were awesome. And I'm so grateful for faculty members like you that were so engaged in us and just really helped to push us to think for ourselves and to be creative. And I just loved my time at Marshall getting to know you all, and grateful that we've reconnected on Facebook, because now it's fun to stay in touch. So thank you. I'm glad you're here.
Well, Jenn, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know you have made some we've made some schedule changes and different things like that, but thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. I think our students learned a lot. It was a great presentation, and it was a great way to kick off our academic year for this fall semester for the CohenTalks presentation. Thank you so much, and I think that ends our presentation unless you have something else to say.
I just want to thank you for the opportunity to come back. My heart always belongs to the herd. I will always be a daughter of Marshall. And please, for any of the students that are out there that have additional questions or just want to talk to somebody who's been down this path, don't hesitate to send me an email, because I really do love engaging with you and would be happy to make the time for it. So have a great day. I'll be watching the game on Saturday on TV. And as always, go herd.
Absolutely, go herd. Thank you, Jenn. Have a good one. Thank you. Thank everyone for participating.
Thank you, Jenn.
Bye, Dr. Avi. Thank you.
Thanks. Great talk. Wonderful. Thank you.